As we've been talking about priestly formation, we've seen that it has several key areas. One is academic. One is on the human level, just forming us to be healthy, integrated human beings. One is in terms of spiritual formation. How do we fall more deeply in love with Christ and develop a prayer life that keeps us rooted in that relationship? And then the fourth one is pastoral. How do I discover the skills that are already within me and learn the new ones that I need to learn to be an effective pastor for God's people in the parish? How do I preach well? How do I teach well? How do I interact with that person in the hospital? What do I do with the person who's come to talk to me because they're deeply wounded and sad and are turning to the Lord and His church for a way to reach out a hand to find something to hold on to? And that's accomplished in a variety of ways. In our diocese, every summer during the formation process, we're in parishes, and then midway through the program of formation, we do what's called a Pastoral Year, where we are immersed into the life of a parish for 14 months, and you all are in that stage right now, living, working, breathing, eating, occasionally sleeping at your parish. Can you talk a bit about how the Lord has led you and affirmed you through what you're experiencing at the parish in the ministry that you're doing there in your parishes right now as Pastoral Year seminarians?
You know, I look back and I remember as a kid looking at the priest and saying, his life is so weird. It's so it's foreign. Like, how do you get there? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I'm finding myself in a rectory with one of those weird old guys, you know? Like that's what I had in my head as a kid, and all of a sudden I find myself living with this guy, and he's not weird and he's not old, although he might be up in age. And all of a sudden it became normal, and the activity of the priest that I'm sometimes shadowing, sometimes kind of going off on my own because I can do some certain things over others, it's all very normal, and it seems all very natural. And the giftings I didn't think I had when I first entered formation 3 years ago, all of a sudden I get up and it's no big deal, and what needs to come comes out, either in the way I express myself physically in relation to people, or in the words that I speak, whether it's in a class or in a reflection somewhere. It becomes something natural, something that I want to do when I get up in the morning. And the kind of pace that you have to live isn't abnormal anymore. Once it seemed normal to do the 9 to 5, and now all of a sudden 9 to 5 doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it's so much more natural to work in the spurts that you tend to work, and in the downtimes you find yourself in occupations in the midst of the parish or out in the larger community that you never would have had the opportunity to do, because you're that kind of person. You're free enough in the type of role that you have to go do those things. And I was just struck by how normal it all felt.
One of the things that has been affirming for me this pastoral year is of preaching and of being actually to speak in front of people, and I've had the opportunity a lot during my pastoral year to be able to do that. Once a week at daily mass, and once a month, for weekends, and then teaching the RCIA class and teaching some of the confirmation classes, and then other random things. I preached a funeral recently, and just having that sense of being used by God. I mean, I am by no means a great preacher or a great communicator, but people often tell me, "Oh, thank you so much. That was great what you said. It's what I needed to hear." And I'm thinking, wait a minute, how does this work? I'm not very good, but somehow they're getting something out of it. And I just come back to that. It's God, and as long as you are communicating, as long as they're hearing God's voice in you, then you don't have to be a great preacher. You don't have to be a Michael Renninger. You don't have to be exactly polished, in certain areas. That still, what's important is the message, and that gets across. And so so sometimes your weakness can be your strength, as St. Paul says. So that's one way for me.
I think the area that I had the least experience in is the whole administrative side of the pastoral life, and that's not the focus of ministry, but it's a necessary central element. If you don't have the money and you don't have things worked out in an intelligent way, then you can't do the larger ministries. And one of the things in several of the parishes that I've been in, actually all of the parishes that I've served in summer assignments and now in my pastoral year, I've taken time to spend learning the whole sort of business side of the parish, because that's not my background at all. And especially in our current setting, because I'm there for a year, my office is right next to that of she's really our business manager. She calls herself the bookkeeper, but she's the business manager. And she's great. I mean, she's a practicing Catholic and a member of the parish, and just a wonderfully fun person. But she and I will talk about stuff, administrative finance stuff. And you realize that on the one hand, the business practices of the church are the same ones as a small company. I mean, you have the way personnel works, the way that the financing works, and bookkeeping and all that sort of thing. And yet there is a very different character to it. Mm-hmm. In that our business manager, she does what she does as a prayer, so to speak, as a gift to the church in a response of faith. And so it's not just keeping the books straight for her, it's serving the church and making sure the church's funds are where they need to be and being used as they need to be used. I mean, that's how she takes on her responsibility. And that blows me away. I mean, it's not just money, but it's even the money part, the keeping of the books part, is a form of ministry. Mm-hmm. And all the the other thing. That's the most obvious example of this, but just the way that the staff works, or the way you deal with human resources. There's always a pastoral or ministry element to that, and that's been something that I guess I won't say it surprises me, but the depth of commitment that everybody on the staff has, or as you say, I mean, even parishioners who, you were saying this, who have infinitely greater understanding of business than I do, and are very successful, spend time with the parish helping people to make wise decisions. I mean, it's all ministry.
When I was a Pastoral Year Seminarian, the baptismal font sprung a leak. And this was at a church that had been renovated, so it was a large font with lots of water that sat on top of a floor that was raised off of the ground, and there was like a crawl space underneath. And so myself and a repair guy were crawling literally underneath the church floor, and I think we found some dead bodies and things. I mean, it was crazy how dry and dirty it was down there. And I found myself thinking, now, I'm going to graduate school for this, to fix a leak in the font. But then I realized, especially as I spent more time with the parish families, when you're a dad, mm-hmm. If the roof leaks, you show your love for your children by making sure the roof gets fixed. And if you're a dad and the plumbing gets stopped up, you're the one that's got to do it, because that's what you do, And in the Catholic tradition, we're called father, and so at the end of the day, it's the pastor's job to preach a really great homily, but also, if there's a pothole in the parking lot that one of your parishioners can fall in, you're loving your people and serving them by making sure that gets taken care of. Not that you have to do it all yourself, that's a bad model, but you just make sure that the practical life of the parish family gets taken care of, and that's an act of great love, just as much as visiting them in the hospital or preaching well to them or teaching the teenagers. That there's a practical side of that, just as every parent has to do when they're taking care of their kids. But we finally fixed the font, but it took a while. So and that was part of the ministry.
Yeah.